Now on Money Talk 1010 AM, it's the Morgan Streetman Show. Morgan and Roxanne Wilder are discussing everything from world, national, and local issues to information from the unknown. And since Morgan's an attorney, there'll probably be a little something from the law. Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Well, it's great to be back here on the Morgan Streetman Show. I'm David Gornoski, filling in for my good friend Morgan. He's away, but I am excited to join you again. It's been the second time that I've filled in for our good friend Morgan, and he's always got great insights. He is always filled with the data, the facts, and I know that you've come to respect that each and every program that he does with you. But myself, just a little bit about myself, my program, I do a podcast and a radio program called A Neighbor's Choice. And we do a lot of interesting guests and topics similar to Morgan Streetman and what he puts on. But I think we'll have a great show today. One of the things that I've been thinking about lately is just how we have to look at the fundamentals of where we are as a society to evaluate whether we're going in the right direction. And when I look at all the news, I was just on the way to visit you today. I was hearing a news. They said at least 50% of young couples are having a very difficult time conceiving. 50% of young couples are having significant fertility problems in America. And I thought to myself, that's pretty shocking when you think about half of all couples. That's become that big of a problem. Of course, if you can't have conception, if you're not able to reproduce, you're not going to have a civilization, right? I mean, if you're at 50% for young people, if that trend continues to go higher and higher, as it has been, then at some point you're not going to have a civilization. It's kind of a foundational aspect of having society, is you've got to have couples, young couples that are able to conceive. And so why is that happening? That's a question we have to ask. Why is that happening? And what does it say about a society that seems to be yawning in indifference overall about these types of trends? You know, right now, another headline I saw on Revolver.news said that, this is a news aggregator, who said that less than half of Americans say God definitely exists. So less than half of Americans say that God definitely exists. So that's a drop from where we've been. I remember that's a pretty precipitous drop in terms of people's belief in God as something that exists, as someone that exists. TheHill.com has the story further if you'd like to research this. It's pretty shocking, but when you think about it, it makes sense. If you have a society that doesn't really have, says not quite 50%, according to The Hill, of Americans say they have no doubt about the existence of God, according to, this is a 2022 survey released on Wednesday at the University of Chicago. And as recently as 2008, the share of sure believers topped 60%. 34% of Americans never go to church, the highest figure ever recorded in 5 decades of surveys. 27% of Americans claimed no religion in 2022, up from 19% in 2012 and 16% in 2006. So that the article says that this report tracks a historic decline in the nation's Christian population, especially among white people. The share of Americans who identify as white evangelical Protestants has dwindled from 23% to 14% since 2006. The share of mainline white Protestants has fallen from 18% to 14%. White Catholics have declined from 16% of the population to 13%. It says nearly 3/4 of people believe in life after death. That number has remained relatively stable over the decades. Only 7% of people say they do not believe in God. And so, it's still pretty alarming. You look at some of those statistics. If you happen to believe that societies flourish when they have a belief that life has meaning, life has purpose, and that what you do matters, even when no one's looking. How you conduct yourself, your conduct, your character, those things matter in the grand scheme of things, that there's actually a purpose, there's a telos to your life, so to speak, that there's a reason to get up and serve others, or to do what is right for others, and to treat your neighbor in a loving way. To have that kind of animating force, oftentimes people have associated that with essentially what it means to believe in God. And so if that's declining, people are losing hope in that. And at the same time, we're seeing declining ability to have fertility in the young. Something is making our society lose its hope, lose its ambition, lose its confidence, its assertiveness. I mean, we see that all the time in the world stage. Every time the Western countries get around, they're always talking about how they need to destroy all access to energy that's cheap for the middle class and the poor to live off of. They need to sabotage that because the planet's going to explode any minute. We're told that, basically the lifeblood of our economy, that which has allowed us to enjoy prosperity, is that which is destroying the planet. And that creates a kind of pathological madness in folks who truly believe that in their bone, to the point where you see them doing all kinds of insane things to extinguish that which allows for society to flourish, like access to inexpensive energy. Actively being done right now. I recently interviewed Oliver Stone on my show. He's a great film director, the legendary Oliver Stone. He has a new movie coming out, or it's out now. It's called Nuclear Now, where he documents. This is a person who considers himself a progressive. And he said, look, I don't understand it. The radical left doesn't want to allow nuclear energy. They don't want to allow the building of new nuclear reactors around the world. They're actively trying to shut them down in places like Germany. America is way behind on this. Countries like China, of course, and Russia are leading the world on this. Something about our society in the West has lost its ambition, lost its enchantment with life. Enchantment, that's a word you don't hear a lot, but to me that means that having that spark, that wonder, right? That kind of drive to do great things and to believe in oneself and one's neighbors. And so that has to be brought into the picture when we talk about all these other different data points that I've laid out so far. Declining fertility amongst the young, lack of belief in God, lack of confidence in that belief, and as well as this decline in wanting to do great things to make civilization function with something like energy is essential for that happening. So I think there's a tale of two pictures going on, and that is, what does it mean to have progress in society? Does progress happen through the barrel of a gun? Does progress happen through humanity remaking humans into whatever they want them to be? That seems to be the story that we hear on TV. We can remake humanity by throwing away all the different forms of energy that we've developed with our technologies and using more primitive forms of energy like solar and wind farms that are just intermittent. They don't have the level of scale necessary to provide for robust society that is something that the average person could afford to live with. But there's a desire to go there by force, by using government coercion and multinational monopolies to force us into that direction. Not using innovation like nuclear, like Oliver Stone recommends, and Robert Kennedy Jr. also recommends the market is the thing that will solve pollution. Those are the old school liberal view of the world that they represent. But rather, there's this new narrative that we hear that, the only thing that humanity can do to progress and make us better every day is through government control and multinational partners doing that, working hand in hand, these oligarchs managing our destiny. All of that gives us an indication of what they think moves the world, which is that might makes right. That's one picture. The other picture is a little bit more different, and we'll flesh that out when we return. On the Morgan Streetman Show, I'm David Gornoski filling in. Back in just a moment. The Morgan Streetman Show returns. I'm your host, David Gornoski, filling in for your main host, who's away this time. But it's great to be with you and just kind of giving an overview thought of the difference. Two different paths to progress is kind of the theme that I've been working with you, if you've just tuned in now. And again, remember, you can catch the show today at 6 o'clock in the evening as well. Will be a replay at 6 o'clock. If you've missed anything, you don't want to miss that. Right here on 1010 a.m. And so when I talk about this matter of progress, it sounds like, oh, okay, well, we hear this a lot. What's your point? Well, the point is that you have to decide what is it going to be as the driving force for your society. Are you going to just kind of slink back into kind of apathy and say, you know what, it's not my problem. I don't really care if people have fertility problems at an epidemic level. I don't care if people believe in God or not. I don't care about this or that. Well, look, if you have a nonchalant, I don't care attitude, there's plenty of societies around the world that do care about a lot of things, and they're very hungry to go ahead and gobble up resources and get on with remaking the world in their image. Places like China, places all over the world have a lot more animating vitality to them, so to speak, than a mindset that says, I don't care. So that's not going to get anyone anywhere. And of course, when you have an I don't care attitude, guess what? Your crime goes up in your neighborhood. You know, you see the trash on the ground. That's an I don't care mentality. When you see trash littered everywhere, we're in a neighborhood that used to not have that. That's a transition from I care to I don't care mentality. When you see roads and customer service declining, you see quality and ingredients quality and products and health declining, that's an I don't care mentality baked into your food system. And you go to hospitals, and maybe sometimes where there was a hospital that had great, stellar service, maybe it's starting to decline a little bit. Maybe when the patient needs help and they press the call button, it takes maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes to come when it used to take maybe 10 minutes for a nurse to come. That's a I don't care mentality becoming a part of society, baked into the fabric of the things that you would expect. So that's the problem with the I don't care mentality, the nonchalant, apathetic approach, right? Is that sooner or later the I don't care mentality catches up and it bites you when you don't expect it. Because things matter and our attitudes matter and our thoughts matter. And when we have negative thoughts and we soak in those kind of I don't care thoughts, then that's the kind of society that we end up manifesting all around us. So it's important to have values. It's important to care. So the question is, what should those values be? I recently had the chance to be at the Monticello estate of Thomas Jefferson, our founding father, who wrote the Declaration of Independence. And, the kind of values that he was trying to espouse, although the Monticello visitor center and everything is very, very quick to remind us constantly when you go to that home now in Virginia where he lived about all of his flaws. They speak a lot about his flaws. But, at the best of what he was trying to say was that human liberty matters and that tyrants shouldn't rule the world. They don't have a divine right to rule and trample down your life or your property or the things that you have as your liberty. Those are things that are given to you by your innate status of being a human being made in the image of God. That was the best of what Thomas Jefferson was putting forth into the world. And, you talk about, I've been to, other states. You've been to the home of the late Elvis Presley, Graceland, and you go to Monticello and you think this is kind of the same thing, kind of a rock star, although one is creating a music genre and one is creating a nation. There's different scales in terms of what they actually do, but in some sense there's kind of a gradient to these figures. I mean, Elvis, died with some kind of controversial realities, and at the same time Thomas Jefferson died with controversial realities, with a lot of his legacy being challenged because he wasn't consistent in applying principles of liberty to the issue of slavery. And there was a concern about, history is going to judge you very poorly. One of his contemporaries said to him. And he died in a debt equivalent to about $2.5 million in our dollars today. And so, sometimes the great rock stars and change makers, they don't get quite the same heroes' remembrance when they pass as they get later on. But the point still remains that there's something about the electric energy of an Elvis Presley, the electricity of a Thomas Jefferson's mind and his vision for a nation built on liberty, not on tyrants. These things have lasting impact, and they spark the imagination of people to emulate them through the ages. And I think that message of liberty is based on a respect for human persons and families that puts tyrants on notice that they're not going to be the arbiters of progress. They're not going to be the ones who dictate what humans are able to do, and that they don't have the right to make human beings into whatever image they want. And I think that is the other path to progress, based on liberty, based on limited power, based on the passage in the Bible, power made perfect in weakness. Not trying to be a grandiose empire, but having respect for limitations, not just as an individual, but as a nation. That you can't be the policeman of the world if you want to be great, if you want to have a lasting nation. That being a policeman of the world makes you end up becoming a crooked cop on the world stage, where your foreign policy becomes completely hubristic, ineffective, and basically creating chaos. All of those things are rooted in a different package for progress, a different package. And I think that's the question we have to choose today. So we've looked at the progress package that we're being told right now, which is that human beings are to be sheep, they're to be herded into different directions by elites. And then we look at the Founding Father vision, which was more about, no, actually human beings are not to be prodded and herded by elites, although he recognized that there was going to be a natural aristocracy and rich folks and oligarchs and so forth, but that they wouldn't be able to have a government that would have a monopoly over everybody else's destiny. And that's the question we have to decide today. Are we going to go into a vision that looks something like what the Founding Fathers glimpsed at imperfectly and maybe build on that and make it a more perfect union, a better vision than even they imagined at the time? Or are we going to go towards this new elite vision that we've been told is the only thing in town and surrender basically to this cattle slop mentality that they have for us? You see it all around us. The fertility issue, let's go back to that. 50% of young couples are not able to have very extreme difficulties with fertility. Why is that happening? Well, a lot of that is because of the food system. The United States government has subsidized what is basically industrial waste product in the form of vegetable oils. These vegetable oils do a nasty number, if you look at the scientific data, on your mitochondria. Your mitochondria are the little batteries in your cells. That's what allows you to have health. And when you eat these vegetable oils, which were never meant to be food, they're synthetically created they're rancid. They oxidize when they're exposed to light. When you get those vegetable oil bottles on the shelf and they're exposed to light in the grocery store, they're oxidizing. They're becoming rancid and they're becoming unstable. And they stay that way when they're in your body, by the way. When you eat vegetable oils, your body doesn't know how to process them, so it ends up storing in your body for years, and they still continually become rancid while they're in your body. They create inflammation, they rot basically while you're in your body. You don't want that. And yet our government has made them so dirt cheap, and our food companies, because they've subsidized them, big soy, big corn, these big crops, monocrops that are the basis for the vegetable oil products that are in so many snack foods and processed foods and fried foods and ranch dressings, salad dressings that you eat are loaded with soybean oil and corn oil and safflower oil, all these different fake oils. And we were told for years by government experts that those things were the healthiest thing in the world, that they were healthier than grandma's butter and so forth. Turns out that's what's been driving fertility declines. because they absolutely destroy your cells and your body. They absolutely do a wicked number on your ability to have a thriving, functioning body. And it's something that's a huge problem, bigger than this pandemic, the health effects of these products. I'm David Gornoski in for Morgan Streetman. We'll be back in just a little bit. Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. I'm David Gornoski, your guest host, filling in today live. If you'd like to join in on the discussion, I'm talking about a tale of two progresses. Are we going to progress through violence and coercion from oligarchs and elites, or are we going to progress in the tradition of what we saw with the Founding Fathers, the best of what they were trying to glimpse at in their time in history, which is one that is based on innovators, on allowing misfits to flourish, on allowing liberty and ideas and reason to prevail, on allowing property to be held sacred, on allowing liberty and freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of all these different values becoming a part of the future as the driving force of our society. If you want to join in and call in live about these topics that we've fleshed out thus far, you can call in at 888-404-1010. That's 888-404-1010 if you want to join in on the discussion. So when I look at, again, the headlines of our time, I just saw on CNN Live that Belgorod, a city in Russia, is being shelled right now by Ukraine. The war continues. Wars continue to be the fixation of our elites. They don't want to find peace. They don't want to have a quick resolution to conflict. It seems like our government's bread and butter is to figure out some justification for keeping apart a conflict, a foreign conflict, that somehow our elites will make money funding. How many more years will we go on with that? How many more years will we stay stuck on a war-based economy to get going? That's a destructive mindset. When your whole economy is based on funding one side of a far-off war with billions and billions and billions of dollars in perpetuity, no seemingly end in sight, how are we going to have a society if that's the way we're going to build our society? A society that needs war and conflict, death and destruction to keep itself going? Come on. Can you believe that? That's what people want? That they want a war-based economy? Nobody wants that in good faith. People want to have a society where it's geared towards production, towards innovation, towards people being able to afford a home. Have you seen people be able to afford a home recently? People trying to start off in society, are they able to buy a home like they were in previous times in America when we believed in ourselves? See, what I'm trying to say is all of the different currents that I've been fleshing out so far, they all go hand in hand. They all go together as a package deal. Liberty of the individual, liberty of property, liberty of mind, of our reason, all those things go hand in hand with a society that believes in progress by love, by peace, by creativity. And at the same time, what we see today, declining in confidence, declining in belief in God, all of those things go hand in hand with a society that wants to give up and not care, or to care and believe and put their trust in elites that think they have a divine right to rule. They think they're God. See, elites that think they're God are the kind of people who will send you off to go, whether it's your money or your people, your kids, to go fight in a war in Russia. that won't have any end in sight. But the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, not blessed are the people who depend on war in perpetuity for their economy to stay afloat. That's the opposite. Recently, we've seen nations in the Middle East getting along together where they were at enmity with one another before. Saudi Arabia starting to get along with Syria. Saudi Arabia starting to get along with Iran. Mortal enemies, now they're getting along. And America is angry about that because America's foreign policy elites, the neocons and the neoliberals, their entire bread and butter is making sure people in their own neighborhoods don't get along with one another so that they can keep the conflicts going in perpetuity. I mean, you got $1 trillion military-industrial complex every year. That's a lot of money you got to keep going. There's no wonder that as soon as we wrapped up the Afghanistan debacle, we went right into funding all this expensive boondoggles in Ukraine. There's no wonder. Because that gravy train has to keep going. And it's no wonder that the military, by the way, is having a hard time getting people to want to come into the military. They just recently made the Navy SEALs recruitment leader as a transgender. I mean, come on. I mean, that's what we're fighting for nowadays. That's what people want to lay their lives on the line for, is making sure you get universal gender reassignment surgery in your nation. Who wants to fight for that? That literally is a deal breaker for a lot of folks. And yet that's what is now the new recruitment face for people in the military. And then you have your watered-down Bud Light, that whole situation. Again, the symbol of that was supposed to be somebody who's trying to remove their sense of gender, blurring the lines of between what is male and female. That's what happens to a society when they've lost their confidence in themselves. When you don't believe in yourself anymore, when you don't believe you can do great things, when you have disenchantment about the world, you're left to just basically navel gaze, become extremely emotionally caught up in yourself, and doing novel experiments on, hey, well, let's try to deconstruct gender. That sounds fun. Yeah. Meanwhile, everybody else is trying to figure out how to do cutting-edge nuclear energy, making housing more affordable. Other nations they've got their energy, they've got their vitality, they've got their self-confidence, they've got their worldview, they've got their belief in their God, or whether it's a communism God or a ethno God, North Korea. Whatever it is, they've got something that's driving to some degree a unity of purpose. If you don't have a transcendent unity of purpose, you are going to be stuck in lunchroom drama. If you don't believe you can cure cancer as a society, you're going to have lunchroom drama to fight about. What's lunchroom drama? That's when classic school setting where you're fighting over who's sitting at whose table. Who's sitting at the cool kids' table and which table is the cool kids' table, right? All that conflict, that's what society's politics and culture war is about. People who don't believe they can do anything great, so now all they have to do is shuffle the chairs around the lunchroom about who's sitting where. That's what you do when you believe that impotent elites are the only thing you have in town to drive you into the future. If they tell you sit inside and stay locked down, then you do it. And you don't ask questions. If they tell you your body's is not capable of fighting off diseases on its own or with inexpensive non-toxic support supplements and repurposed drugs, then you say, okay, I believe it. That settles it. That fundamentalist dogmatic insistence on trusting failed elites is the hallmark of a society that it's lost its hope and its dreams. Sounds like us, but it doesn't have to be us. I don't like, a lot of people in talk radio, they like to keep you in a state of anger or despair, unfortunately, because that's good for ratings. People get hooked on that feeling, unfortunately. You tune into some programs and they just always tell you, oh, they're coming to get you. Government's going to get you. Government's going to get you. Government's going to get you. Yeah. And it gets you all riled up. And then you get your dose of that for the day and you go on about your business, right? Well, I don't want to do that. because that's not fair. It's not real. It's not true. It's just a cheap trick. It's helpful if you want to do that kind of gimmick, but I think it's not truthful. So we don't want to stay in despair. We have to look at actionable things that we can do in our lives, starting with our mindset, starting with the way we process our minds and our thoughts, and then that manifesting into right action that we can take, both individually, in our neighborhoods, and in the nation. One of the things we have to do is stop eating the vegetable oils. You say, my God, I thought you'd come up with something more grand than that. Well, truth is simple. Sometimes truth is right under your nose or in your mouth. These vegetable oil products are driving us into mental health decline. They're driving us into infertility. They're driving us into diabetes, metabolic dysfunction, obesity, cancer. And I understand these things are not going to be easy to get out of. You're not going to, I'm not giving you a quick fix. I'm not telling you do this surgery or take this pill and that'll solve your problem. I'm saying this is a process. This is a process of healing that we need to go through. And it starts with stopping the use of these industrial toxic products that have no use in the food system and have no use being called food. They have no right to be called food. But our government, being captured by oligarchic interests, likes to keep it that way. By the way, these foods have been scientifically demonstrated, these vegetable oils, to stimulate what is called the endocannabinoid system in your food, in your body, which is what they get, the cannabinoid, that's a word related to cannabis, right? And that is a system that creates what people say in the stoner community, they call it munchies, right? Where they're hungry all the time because that's stimulated from the product they've been partaking in, right? Well, vegetable oils do a similar number on your body. They create a stimulation in the endocannabinoid system, which makes you want to eat more of it. So when you get out a potato chip bag and you start eating it with the vegetable oils cooked in the chip, it's the oil and the salt too, but it's that oil that is actually scientifically proven to make you feel like you haven't had enough that triggers your body to keep eating the whole bag. Or French fries, or whatever else it is. Salad dressing, you douse too much of it, whatever, right? That's that vegetable oil that's driving you to feel unsatisfied and want to eat more. That gives you more meaning to the song, Can't Get No Satisfaction. That's called vegetable oil poisoning. That's that song was talking about. And so that's something that drives a lot of our problems. Look, I've been in the same boat as you. But if you don't identify what the problem is, taking a food ingredient out of your life, if you just stay in ignorance is not bliss when it comes back to haunt you with mental health problems, physical debilitation, and rising infertility in society. So remember, it starts with one thing. I'm going to start with that first step, and we'll expand it in just a moment when we return. I'm David Gornoski. By the way, you can call in at 888-404-1010. Back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. I'm filling in for Morgan. I'm David Gornoski, your guest host today. And you can call in with your thoughts or questions or insights about anything I've discussed thus far, about what makes for a society having progress. You can do so at 888-404-1010. Don't forget this show. If you've missed anything, you want to catch it again or share, remember you can catch it again tonight at 6 p.m. right here on this station. And so what are the ingredients of success? I've already dispelled the notion that we can have an I don't care mentality, because an I don't care mentality ends up rearing its ugly head and coming back against us when we get into healthcare and we can't get our nurse to come after an hour of calling the bell for help. Well, that's what happens when you participated in an I don't care mentality. It seeps, it's contagious. See, attitudes and ideas and thoughts are contagious. And if you contribute, you have really nothing to complain about when they come back. What goes around comes around, that idea, right? There's something true about that. What you reap, what you sow, you sow what you reap, or you you reap what you sow. And so when that happens, don't be surprised when you were sowing an attitude of, I don't care, none of my business, I got my retirement, I got my money, or whatever it is, they can, the rest of it's for the birds. Well, no. It's going to come back and get you and make your retirement a little bit more miserable, or your loved ones more miserable, or the trash in your neighborhood more collectively noticeable. All those different things add up. So you can't go that route. So the question is, are we going to go the route of progress of our elites today, which is through coercion, which is through wanting to be God and rule the world through foreign policy adventures and through controlling what we can do for energy and controlling, remaking humanity's genders into some kind of nightmarish hellscape? All of that is what the elites want us to accept. And then there's another notion, which is based more in what we would say the Christian tradition, which is that power is made perfect in weakness. Jesus came in a manger, right? So he came in a lowly state. He came in a state of limitation, not in a state of, I'm the big bad guy and you got to bow to me. That's how the elites of the world act. He comes from a different posture. And that opens up the opportunity for liberty, for innovation, for wonder, for mystery, for all kinds of ideas about the world that give people hope. So I think we need to think big, and I think we need to act in a bold manner. Once we get the vegetable oils out of our life, that starts to help with our health. Once we start to stay out of debt and stop using debt as a crutch to live off of, then we start to live within our means. Then we start to not be over-leveraged when things take a downturn like we're heading into this recession. When we have a big picture mindset, when we treat others the way we want to be treated, when we have a positive mindset about ourselves, then we're able to have a positive mindset about people in relationship to ourselves. Right? These are basic principles that make for a good, abundant life. Recently, James O'Keefe, remember him from Project Veritas, he was ousted from the group. He created his own group, O'Keefe Media Group. He did an expose with a Fox News producer, undercover expose, where the Fox News producer exposed some of the things that got Tucker Carlson fired off of their primetime lineup. It had something to do with Pfizer and Dominion. In the Dominion lawsuit, the Fox News producers seemed to allege that part of that Dominion lawsuit settlement was that they needed to get rid of Tucker Carlson. Now, that's interesting because Tucker Carlson didn't really say anything about Dominion. He never took that issue on. So why would they make that a part of their settlement? Get rid of that guy if you want us to settle. It's interesting, right? Makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, again, is Dominion a company that is functioning as a kind of arm of the state, just like the social media companies are? I mean, think about it this way. If our United States government, as Elon Musk revealed in the Twitter files, and probably only the tip of the iceberg has been revealed, as Elon Musk and many independent and Democrat journalists have revealed, Twitter functioned, like many other social media entities, as a deputized arm of the federal government where they had a deep, very incestuous relationship, very integrated relationship between the federal government and Twitter, where they would say, hey, get rid of that person, take that person's account down, put this one on, whatever. And so if they are that and worried about controlling their sheep and their cattle that they would have an involvement with Twitter, don't you think they might have an interest in having some kind of a cozy relationship with a company like Dominion? That's just a suggestion. Who knows? But you'd have to be a kind of a fool to think otherwise if they're that paranoid about controlling people that they are going to have that much of an involvement with a company that's as seemingly, innocuous as Twitter. What else do they have? And that goes to Pfizer. Pfizer had a reason to get rid of Tucker. Now, that one's a little bit more direct because Tucker criticized that product. But as we've come to realize, Pfizer was basically working as a deputized arm of the United States government. It was DARPA and other defense entities that were behind the manufacturing and creation of this so-called wonder drug that we were all supposed to take. That didn't turn out to be so wonderful after all. So it shows you that what was against Tucker Carlson having his independent voice on the Fox News airwaves was a big, giant pharmaceutical oligarchic group and a oligarchic group for voting tabulations. They didn't want him to talk because that's how fragile the oligarchic system we're in is. They can't even handle any ounce of pushback. They can't handle any ounce of competition of ideas. That's how fragile their position is, which shows you that they don't have a vision for progress. They're just all smoke and mirrors. They're like the Wizard of Oz. It looks scary and fearful with a big green head on the projector, but all it takes is a little dog to pull away the curtain and see it's a little con man behind the whole game. And that's what we have to realize, folks. That's what it means to be American. It's to dig deep, get that grit back, get that confidence back, have great ambition, take care of ourselves, take care of our communities. Don't rely on the elites to do our thinking and for us, and take back our country with cures for cancer, cures for diabetes, cures for heart disease, energy too cheap to meter. All of this can be done with our work, our sweat equity, and our love of our neighbor, guiding us along the way. I'm David Gornoski. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. You can check me out at aneighborschoice.com or email me hello@aneighborschoice.com to stay in touch. Morgan Streetman will be back. For now, Godspeed.